So can you see the view that we're going to have? Those three chairs? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to go double check from my office that I know it's not raw pay.
So we're going to do this for public. So I don't need to say this. The word is spending a water bottle.
I think I am the only viewer. Although that's someone other than my own. This is live right now, by the way. Just in prep for something that starts in 4 minutes. So, broadcast and then the light.
Oh, no, no.
Hello, other viewers. We'll be starting in just a few minutes.
I am so hydrated now. It's ridiculous. Well, I think because then I'll hand it to you.
Right. So they don't have any. They don't get to see the images. So I'm just trying to. I'm wondering what to like, you can angle that just a Marthe. That's great. Angle that on you.
No. Now, why do I have to be big?
You're up front.
2, but you only have a certain amount of wired Wi-Fi ports. Is that good?
Yeah, Mommy totally hit it. There.
Wait. If we angle yours in front of my head.
I'm trying not to be like it's.
Then we thought, no, then it's right in front of Kelley.
That's okay.
I'm trying to bring this. Yeah, I'm trying to bring this down. Let's see.
All right. All right. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. It's absolutely our privilege to introduce you to 3 fantastic authors and give you a chance to hear from them, learn from them, and hopefully get a chance to talk with them a little bit after the fact. My name is Max Gordon. I work for Halifax Learning, and we're going to put this event on. Before I introduce our authors, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do. We work passionately and have for 15 years in Nova Scotia to improve literacy. For over 3,000 students just like you. We're committed to helping every student who struggles to read develop the confidence they need to tackle more interesting and more difficult material. For me, I love to read because there's always something new to learn. There's always a new character to connect to or a new adventure to get lost in. And I think the real magic in books like Harry Potter and things like that is that they get so many people reading and using their imaginations. You know, it opens up worlds and opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise. And in fact, that's why it's important to me when I have my students in my classroom to teach them and find ways to help them embrace learning and embrace reading so that they can sort of open up those worlds for them as well. Sorry, one last thing. So that's what we do at Halifax Learning. Every student who comes in our classroom is invited into a positive and supportive learning environment. Teenagers in my class definitely read these 3 authors. Teenagers around the world do. So that's why we're excited to bring them to you today. So why don't I start introducing them? Earlier we did one of these presentations and I completely forgot to do the author bios. So I made a very strict note on my sheet to not forget it this time.
I think we kind of liked it.
Yeah, we're okay with
that.
So right beside me is Vicki Grant. Her favorite color is blue. To her left, she is Kelley Armstrong. She loves chocolate. And to her left is Marthe Jocelyn, who loves blue chocolate.
Very good.
Excellent. Good
Yeah.
bios.
So I guess that's it. Maybe I'll just turn the mic over to these guys.
Great.
So, yes, I've been elected to tell you a little bit about the Secret series in general. So we're 3 of the 7 authors who wrote a novel for Orca's Secrets. And you'll see them all up there. Woozles has them out in the back. There are 7 linked novels that can be read in any order. So they're not really a series, they're more like a collection. But the idea behind them is all the same. It's 1964. It's somewhere in rural Ontario. There's an orphanage. And in the middle of the night, in June 6, 1964, the orphanage burns to the ground. All the girls stay out safely. The younger girls, the little girls of the orphanage, are fostered out, but there are 7 older girls, all between the ages of 16 and 18. And they're really too old to be fostered out. They'd be out in the world anyways pretty soon. So the matron of the orphanage, Mrs. Hazelton, takes each girl aside individually and tells her that she's on her own now. She's got to go. She gives each girl a small envelope of money. And she also does something that was really illegal at the time, which is she gives each girl a clue as to their birth parents. And so each of us, in our own style, wrote the story of one of those orphans. So that's the basic premise. Now I'm going to pass it on to Marthe. No, I'm not. I'm passing it to Kelly.
I'm here
Kelly is going to take it from here. Thanks.
Okay, so my book in this is The Unquiet Past. When Eric Walters first contacted me to join the group, I had heard of his 7 series, and I knew that none of them had any elements of fantasy or the supernatural in them, and that is what I'm known for. But I said, don't worry, I can write a book without any of that in it. And they said, no, we actually want you to put some of that in. That is what you do. So you can be the one author who puts some element of that. So as you can tell by my cover, yes, there is a bit of that in it. My girl is Tess, and Tess's secret is that she gets an address, and this address leads her to a house north of Montreal. To get there, it's her first time out of the orphanage. She has to take train down to Toronto, train to Montreal, trolley as far north as she can, but then she's stuck not having any way to travel the rest of it. So in that time period, what you would do is put your thumb out and hitchhike. And yes, that is not safe, as she discovered, but she has finally made it, and she's approaching the house now. As soon as Tess crested the hill, she knew why she'd wanted to run from this house. Foreboding, that was the word she'd used. Now she had a new one. Terrifying. The house squatted atop the hill like a stone troll. A porch stretched across the front, yet it wasn't the sort where you'd sit in a rocking chair drinking lemonade in the summer. You're not welcome here. That's what the house said. A stone fortress against the outside world. Go away. Tess looked up, shivering at that house, and thought, no, she would not go away. This address was hers. She had every right to be here, and no mere building would frighten her off. She banged the front knocker. The boom echoed as if she'd rapped on the door to Dracula's castle itself. Dead leaves rustled across the porch. Dirt crusted every surface. She pulled herself up straighter and banged the knocker again. Still no one answered. Tess put her ear to the door. Silence. She walked to a narrow window, rubbed a spot on the filthy glass, and peered inside. A couch. All right, someone must live here. Then she noticed debris on the floor, chunks of wood and plaster, a row of beer bottles, several smashed. The couch tilted backward, one leg missing. The house was empty, abandoned. She walked to the next window. Another spot cleared, another peek inside. More debris and trash and broken furniture. Not just empty, long empty. She swallowed and thought of everything she'd gone through getting here. The train ride, the trip up from Montreal, that man in the pickup, all for nothing. She'd been given a puzzle and hadn't been clever enough to find the answer. No, she would find the answer one way or another. So there's Tess. She has arrived to discover her house is long abandoned. So naturally she breaks in and starts looking around for clues, and that does not go very well. I'll also be introducing. Teresa is actually the author who came up with the concept for these, and her book is Shattered Glass. Her character, Tony, has been in a fire before. She has nightmares of fire and shattering glass and tiny scars all over from that breaking glass, but no idea how that happened, where the fire came from, where the glass came from. So she gets her clue, and she ends up going down into Toronto, going into the music scene, which in 1964 was no place for a 16-year-old girl to be, as she discovers, but she is determined to find out why she has these nightmares and these scars.
My book is a big dose of lucky, and my character's name is Malou. And Malou is of mixed race, but she doesn't know what the races are. She is the only brown-skinned person that she has ever met. The orphanage is full of white girls. The town that the orphanage sits in is full of white people. And she knows from having watched a little bit of television that outside in the world, things are not so good for dark-skinned people. You know, you probably all know from studies that civil rights movement really began in the early 60s. So that's what she's learning about. Before I go into that a bit more, when we got together as authors to do these 7 books, one of the first things we did was come up with a physical description of each of our characters so that we could trade them around and know what each girl looked like. These kids have grown up with each other inside the orphanage, the only family they've ever known, so we had to be pretty intimate with what they looked like and what the other characters behaved like. And so on the subway one day, I saw this girl and I went, oh, that's Malou. So I secretly took her picture, and that's what I had in mind while I was writing. But so Malou has learned from the cook in the orphanage and from watching, as I said, a little bit of television, that scary things are happening out in the world. And one of those things is the 16th Street church bombing, where 4 little girls were killed by a bomb set by Ku Klux Klan sympathizers. And also there have been a series of riots that took place on beaches where African Americans were attempting to enter the water to swim on so-called white beaches, and the police and the white community had come down very hard on them. So these are the things that are reaching the news, and that's making Malou a little bit reluctant to head out into the world. The clue that she gets is an infant's hospital bracelet, and on the bracelet is the name of the hospital, St. Joseph's in Parry Sound, Ontario, and the name Baby Fox. So she suddenly has a name to maybe hang her hat on. And so that's where she eventually does head out. What else is happening in the world in 1964? You all know who these people are, right? So the Beatles have just arrived. This is a brand new hot band in North America, just a few months before these books take place. So that kind of sets the scene. The hairstyles are, these things here are called kiss curls, and this is called a beehive. These are teens wearing very fashionable madras, which is the plaid pattern. That was really the hottest thing in 1964. And boys, don't be laughing, because this is what you were wearing. And speaking of boys, that's another thing that an all-girl orphanage has not provided our orphans with very much knowledge of what boys might be like. And in each of these books, there is a boy and there is a first kiss. And I'm going to read you Malou's. The heading of this section is called Don't. All the things that Dr. Blunt warned us against come blinking into my head like an ambulance siren. Don't let him stand so close. Don't let him smile in the way that makes your face feel hot. Don't let his hand stay a second and then another second on your waist. Don't let his arm lie across your shoulders for a moment while you're walking. Don't let his eyes look down into yours. Don't let his breath tickle your cheek while you're both laughing because you don't know how to get the cap off a bottle of Coca-Cola. And don't, whatever you do, no matter what, close your eyes when his mouth finally meets yours and you taste his lips. A little salty from the baked beans, sweet from the cherry pie, soft and telling you he likes you. If you let that happen, you'll be kissing him again. And because you don't have a curfew, there will be no reason to stop. So that's Malou. I'm also going to tell you about Kathy Kacer's book. Kathy Kacer, her character's name is Sarah, and Kathy writes mostly about all about the Holocaust. Every book she's written has to do with World War II and the plight of Jewish people in Europe. And Sarah receives a couple of clues to give her a hint as to who she really is. And one of them is the Star of David on the necklace that you see around her neck and on the cover. And she has never met a Jewish person. She had no idea she was Jewish. And this is very shocking to her. It makes her a little more empathetic to Malou, who she suddenly realizes must have always felt like, and I mean, it occurs to her for the first time what an outsider Malou must have felt like, because she is suddenly cast into a different role herself and not at ease with it yet. The other clue that she receives is a letter signed by a doctor in a DP camp in Europe, in Germany, which a DP camp stands for displaced persons. And after the war, of course, there were thousands and thousands of people who had nowhere to go. Their homes had been destroyed, their families had been lost, and they didn't know what to do with themselves. So these large camps were set up for people to gather until they found something, what next steps to take. So Sarah's the only orphan that, she's the one that travels the furthest. She goes to Germany, and the only chance she has of following a thread to her own identity is to find the doctor who signed the paper that said she was fit to travel as an infant away from Germany into Canada. So she does indeed find that doctor, and her past holds kind of awful secrets, but she meets a boy as well in the process, and has, learns good things as well. So that's Kathy.
Great. I now am going to tell you a bit about two of the other authors' books who aren't here. Nora McClintock's book is called My Life Before Me, and as you can see from the dramatic cover there, you see a noose, so you know there's something pretty bad that happens. Nora's character's name is Katie, and she's one of the older girls at the orphanage. She's not that sorry when she's told that she has to leave. She was somebody raring to go already. She has dreams of being a journalist. And when the orphanage burns down, Mrs. Hazelton gives her as a clue a clipping, and it's a photo of a grave that's been vandalized. The gravestone has been kicked in two, and this clipping is going to set Katie on her way down to the United States. And again, it's 1964. We talked a little bit about the civil rights movement. Katie's going to find herself in the midst of a mystery that has to do with some of the work of the Ku Klux Klan. And that's how she's going to find out about who her birth parents are. The next book is by Eric Walters. It's called Innocent. His main character is Betty. And when the orphanage burns down, Mrs. Hazelton is going to let Betty know that the reason she ended up at the home is because her mother was murdered. And Betty's also going to find out she's from Kingston. So she's going to head off on her way to Kingston, Ontario. She's going to get work at a very fancy home. And she's also going to find out then who, that her father is in Kingston Penitentiary, the Big Men's Penitentiary, and that he is in jail for having murdered her mother. So she's going to visit him there, And he will say to her, and I'm not spoiling anything here, he'll say to her, I would never hurt your mother. I loved her. I'm innocent. And that's how Betty's quest begins. So then my book is called Small Bones, and my character's name is Dot, as on the, like you see on the shoes there. And Dot arrives at the orphanage in just hours after she's born. There's a knock in the middle of the night. Mrs. Hazelton, the matron, comes running downstairs, opens the door, no one's there, there's just a bundle left on the steps. And when she looks closer, she sees that there is a very tiny baby, a newborn, premature baby, a baby that's so small there's a doubt that she'll live the night. She does, of course. She goes up in the orphanage, and the orphanage is strict. Mrs. Hazelton makes them do chores and everything, but it's the only home they've known. So when it burns down, she really doesn't want to go. But Mrs. Hazelton pushes her out the door, basically, and the clue that she gives Dot is the bundle that she was wrapped in. And it turns out to be a man's overcoat. In fact, a very fine man's overcoat. The label says 100% cashmere, hand sewn, and gives the name and address of a tailor shop. As well, there are also the remains of the initials embroidered on the inside of the man who once owned it. So that's the clue that's going to get Dot heading off to cottage country. And when she's there, she's going to meet a lot of people, type of people that she wouldn't have known before. So there's cottage country, circa 1964. Picture Dot there. She's going to meet the very wealthy people who summer at this fancy resort. She would have met many of those at the orphanage. She's going to meet the kids who work at the resort, a lot of the university kids. In fact, she'll end up getting a job there. She's also going to meet boys for the first time. There's a beach party. And she will also get an indication that somebody in this town and the resort nearby does not want her there. And a little tiny spoiler alert, there will have a connection with the Second World War. This is 1964, so our girls were all born at the end of the 1940s, so a number of the books have a World War II connection. Anyways, I'm just going to read you a little bit from my book. So, like I say, Dawn ends up trying to get to this tailor shop. When she takes the train there, when she arrives in town, she finds that the shop has been closed since the end of the war. And so there's no reason for her to be there. She checks her purse to see if she can go home and realizes she's left her money on the train. So she has no money. This is before cell phones, no way to reach anybody. She sees that there's a job being advertised at the resort, so she starts walking down this long deserted highway on her way to the resort, and she hears a bike come up behind her. And she turns around, and it happens to be the boy who had winked at her on the train. So he asks her where she's going. The Dunbury Arms, I said. You're walking there? I was apparently weak in the head. In kitten heels? That almost made me laugh. I mean, a boy with messy hair and wrinkled chinos actually knowing what kitten heels were. So maybe I smiled a bit. Somehow he's in front of me again and doing that winking thing he'd done on the train. I curled my shoulders forward and sort of muffled a laugh into my neck, which Tony was always telling me not to do because it made me look mentally deficient. And it's bad enough being from a home without appearing like there was some reason you were put there in the first place. He stuck out his hand and said, Eddie Nicholson. I stared at it for a second and put down my suitcase, and we shook. Dot lied, I said. He said, oh, okay, Dot, give me your suitcase then. I said, why? He pulled back his chin like it was so obvious and said, I'm double riding in there. I didn't answer, but he smiled like, all right then. He got me to hold the bike while he figured out how to strap my suitcase onto the back. Then he got on the seat, put his hands around my waist, and went, okay, up you go. He had his arms on either side of me, and every breath he took sent goosebumps up my neck. So pretty soon it felt like all the skin on my whole body was pleated behind my ears. Someone honked as they drove by. Eddie waved and the bike swerved and I fell back and the whiskers on his chin grazed my shoulder. Then he swerved to avoid a pothole and we bumped into each other and he went, whoa. Then he swerved another time even though the road was perfectly flat and no one was driving by. That's when I figured out he was doing it on purpose. I went, hey, and he said, took you long enough. A little later he said, you smell good. And I thought I was going to die until he added, all smoky, like bacon or something. I was afraid he was going to realize I was one of the orphans who'd escaped the fire at the home and brought me on the side of the road right then and there. But he just asked if I wanted to split his malted milk. He tore open the wrapper with his teeth and snapped the bar in two without even waiting for an answer. And that's the way it went. He talked, I nodded, shook my head or shrugged. It was hard to keep my wits about me. Eddie smelled like fresh laundry and chocolate and band deodorant, and way better than I was led to believe boys would smell. I don't believe I'd ever encountered anything that terrifying in my entire life. And I'm including the fire when I say that. So that's a bit about that. So that's, we've covered all 7 books now. Where did our moderator go? So I guess at this stage, I'm sure Chantal has some questions for us, but if anyone in the audience has any questions, we would be delighted to answer them.
They're all quiet.
Yeah, they're all shy. Yeah. So the question is, after they left the orphanage, where did they end up living? Well, each girl ended up living somewhere different. Right after the fire, most girls ended up staying in a church hall for a few days. My character ended up staying with the woman that she helped clean.
So yeah, Tessa takes off as soon as possible, and throughout the book we have her sleeping in various places and doesn't actually get a permanent place to stay, or semi-permanent, until the end of the book.
Lou stays in a garden shed on the grounds of the school, the orphanage for a little while, even though the orphanage is a heap of smoking rubble. She stays there on the property because it feels closest to her home in her mind. But they all just pretty much within a couple of days, they've all left and gone elsewhere. Yes. I don't think anyone actually meets face to face. There are some of the characters have exchanged letters and telephone call. I'm not sure, but most of the actual overlapping is in the first, say, 30 pages, and then there's thinking about each other, and there is some letter writing, but that's all.
And the reason we had to do that is we wanted it that all the books could stand alone, and you could read the books in any order. So we had to be kind of careful. Like if we had too much of people having to be at a certain time or exchanging information, they would ruin it.
Yeah, if you had, say, Vicky's character and my character meet up at the end of my book, I would tell you what happened to Vicky's character, and then you would be spoiled for her book.
Right. So yeah, it was the way of maintaining secrets, was not to have too much ongoing overlap.
Mm-hmm. Favorite kind of chocolate is dark chocolate. I'm a big fan of it, particularly because the darker the chocolate, the less likely my boys are to steal it on me, because it's just gross. So.
Pardon me? That is left a complete mystery, actually. He asked to have the orphanage burned down. At one point, someone, was it you, was thinking of making the burning down the orphanage part of the story. Maybe it wasn't. Was it you?
Well, I think I was the one who suggested the orphanage burns down. But I have to say something. We've done a number of school visits now, and I've been asked that question a number of times, and it's always boys, and I don't know what to get. And I feel like I should say, well, there's an electrical failure.
That's what my answer has always been, well, it was a very old house, so it was probably electrical failure.
Yeah, it wasn't a bomb or anything.
Not arson.
Yeah.
Although Malou thinks briefly that she might be the reason. But
Someone
but it's just not.
Down.
Right.
The question for them.
These books in particular? Well, I think this series in particular, we were all invited to write them. So Eric Walters was the fellow who came up with the initial idea of these 7 linked novels by 7 different authors. And he did it first with male authors. And then Teresa Toten, who wrote Shattered Glass, had this idea of mostly female authors with all female protagonists. And then we were each contacted. So that's what
we were inspired by a contract.
Yeah, yeah. The best kind of inspiration. Dollar signs. Should we each answer?
Yeah, we'll each answer.
Okay. Yes, I would say. I mean, they're all fictional, but they're all rooted in some particular either time or period. Some people, they're actual events, but mine, for instance, there's not an actual event that does it, but it's based on the fact that there are all these young men coming back from war, and what condition would they have been in. So.
Yeah, mine does come out of not necessarily what's happening in this novel, but it is related to, there were experiments happening at McGill University in the late 50s and into the from the 50s on, that were actually being done for the CIA brainwashing experiments. So I was able to take some interesting history there and tie it in.
I can't really say why mine.
No,
because I know you haven't read it, so but no, you can't know ahead of time what happens in my book or what the aspects of the book are related to reality. But one thing that is true is some secrets in 1964 were actually dangerous or illegal. Some things about that are now a normal, casual part of daily life, back then could have put you in jail or had you seriously ostracized in life. And that's one of the things that I was sort of interested in looking at, was how the nature, in some cases, trials and tribulations are very much the same as they were 50 years ago. And in other cases, what could have caused serious trouble back then is now just part of everyday life. So that's.
And just so that we're not leaving out the other authors who aren't here, certainly Teresa's book, Shattered Glass, is based on an actual event that happened. And I don't want to give it away, but it's based on a historical event. And Nora's book, My Life Before Me, it's based on I call it a historical event, the Black soldiers. An actual
right. There was
it's rooted in history.
Yes.
History that actually happened, and you sort of take that as the starting point and then make your story up from there. This poor person, I was call it.
That's not really the name.
It's the tagline,
but it's the tagline, right? Because every family does have a skeleton in the closet. I don't know if you know that phrase, but it doesn't mean an actual skeleton. It means everybody has a secret. Your mother has a secret.
These are all
your
teachers,
your teachers have secrets. And each of you have secrets. And certainly for authors, a secret is the whole point of writing a book. There's no, every character in every book has a secret, because otherwise, why would you be reading it? So it's just it's enticing, but it's also true.
I think it's true too that, sorry, was that people continue to have secrets, but perhaps the secrets in 64, like Marthe said, are a bit different from where they are now. On our car drive down, we were talking about Kelley's new book and a different series, and there's a schizophrenic character in it. And we were talking, and I've got many schizophrenic relatives. My brother-in-law's schizophrenic. And so in 64, when he would have been a little boy, people didn't mention it. We didn't bring it up. There was a shame attached to having a mental illness. So, I mean, you guys are much better schooled in that than we were back then. But there were all sorts of secrets like that. Even merely being an orphan in 64 would have been shameful. And like Dot says, you know, I thought maybe he knew that I was one of the orphans who escaped, because there would have been a shame attached to that. Now we know kids can't help, you know, kids can't help who they come from. So the secrets do change, but we continue to manufacture new ones. We're not running out of secrets.
There's a question here, right? Hardest part about writing them as opposed to other books that we've written, these books in particular. Yeah, and that was the toughest part, was that we had to line up our details, especially for that fire scene. We all had to know, what was this orphanage like, what did it look like, who was there, and make sure that all of our stories meshed and that nobody conflicted. And then even going broader than that, even in the editing, they found points where there would be conflict. For example, Tessa's best friend in town was named Bobby, and Nora's main male character was named Bobby. So I was asked to change mine at the last minute, and it got changed to Billy. But if I ever talk about him, he's still Bobby. So others had stuff changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It looks like this group.
Oh, did everyone hear that question? I might repeat it just because there are people being Skyped in. So, do we think the girls would have reacted differently to their secrets today than they did in 1964?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even, go ahead.
They would have reacted differently at many different levels. First of all, it's not illegal to let people know who their birth parents were. If you're in an orphanage or adopted, you can now find out that information about yourself, but it was not those records were sealed back then. And so just starting with that premise right there. And then of course, and this would have been positive for the orphans, but terrible for the storytellers. They had no access to Google. They couldn't just go, oh, you know, in Tessa's case, perhaps, you know, type in the address and find out where it was and get there and, you know who owned it and what happened there. That's absolutely not possible in 1964. And it's not that interesting to read about a kid sitting at a computer Googling something. So it's actually much better to have her get on a bus and hitchhike with a creep and get to the abandoned house. Way better to have it set back then when there's no Google. And then the actual problems themselves, which we've already talked about, many of them are not problems now. So we would have had to come up with a whole new set of stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of, because so much of the society has changed so much, like we deal with racial issues, mental health issues, even the idea of class, you know, that there are rich people and poor people, you know.
Homophobia,
Yeah,
alcoholism,
all those,
lots of different
yeah,
things.
and a lot of that stuff now is kind of a shrug, you know, that people kind of go, well,
oh, you got two moms, who
your
cares?
parents were married when they, you know, when they had you, like, you know, who cares really? So yeah, it is quite different, and that provided us a lot of fodder, I think, for that story.
And even things like not having cell phones. We all loved not having cell phones. When Tess gets into that abandoned house, she ends up breaking through the floor and ending up in a room with no doors. Today, if that happened, you pull out your cell phone and you call for help. Not that much fun. It makes a much better scene if she's in the middle of nowhere, trapped in a room with no doors and no cell phone.
Oh, we just have time for one more? Should we?
He asked if this was the ideal time to set this story or whether we would have been happy with another period. The thing that's interesting is, 1964, it seems like a random date. It turns out when you sit down and Google what happened in 1964, there are many, many events. There are the civil rights, there are the Beatles, there are there are a lot of political things. John F. Kennedy has just been assassinated. Many, many things are happening in the world. But if we just randomly pick 1932, I'm sure we could find a similar set of events to color the backgrounds of our stories. And that's one of the exciting things actually about being a writer and about writing history through fiction, is that we get to read very specifically and in a focused way about a particular time. And you can always find, oh, the pen has just been invented, or did they have matches then? That all kinds of questions come up in every single book that we write, and that's a challenge, and it's fun. So to me, it didn't really matter what year it was. It's just that once the year is chosen, it's pretty exciting to find out specifically.
I think too that for all of us, the year had already been chosen when we started. So that really determined what our stories were going to be about, right? One of the other authors wanted that year because she had an idea for a story. So once it was set then, so I think if it had been set in a different time, we would have told different stories, right? So, and hopefully they would be just as fabulous, but that was the year we got. Because yours was really set, yours really was dependent on
It's just that I was given the year, and then I had done the research on those CIA experiments and knew about the McGill ones, but that ties in perfectly. I'd done that for something totally different and could not use it there perfectly. Quebec in the 60s, fascinating time. You're before official bilingualism. My male character is Métis, and you are before Métis are being recognized as a separate Aboriginal group. But at the time when all of those things are very, very prevalent, and they're talking about it, so it's a great time to be setting a story there.
All right, thank you guys so much for your questions. I'm sorry we don't have time for more. We need to get moving on to something new. First, I think we should all thank our authors, Vicki Grant, Kelley Armstrong, and Marthe Jocelyn. I'd also like to personally thank the Keshen Goodman Public Library for hosting this event, and every teacher, librarian, and adult who came with you today for making this possible. So thanks so much. Also, on the bottom of 2 chairs in front of you, now the chairs aren't all filled up, so you may have to look under the ones in front of you. But there are 2 notes stuck under 2 chairs. And if you find one under your chair, you just won a copy of each of these books.
Whoa!
That's right. So once you find it, you can bring it up to me. We'll get you information, and we'll make that happen, okay? Look in the chairs in front of you.
Look at the other chairs.
Look in the empty chairs. Go, girls.
Look in the empty chairs there.
Maybe while everybody is looking, I think if I can, on behalf of the authors, thank Halifax Learning Center for bringing us here. It's really been fabulous. So, thank you, Sarah and Harry and Matt. Thank you.
Last thing, everybody, you may have noticed when you came in, but Woozles is right back here. Lisa, if you want to give us a wave. we're selling copies of every one of these books. So if you want to buy them, I would head over there. You can also get your bookmarks that you have signed.
We'll go over and sign. Oh, yeah, we'll sign here.
Yeah, so you can bring your bookmarks over this way. The officers will all be here to sign those for you, okay? Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no, I think
You know what? I wanted to share with I think I know where the other one is. Dang. Should be back here. There's one down here. Yes, there's got one, but there's a second one somewhere. Whoever finds it's gonna have to bring it to you. Yeah, we got it here. Thanks. All right, thank you. Put your name and your school and your phone and your teacher. And we're going to get these we're hoping we can give them to you today, but we want to make sure we have enough time for people to buy.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm going to start the new live feed now.